The 883rd meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD 27. Roll call.
Keith Johnbrook. Here. Kurt Susi.
Here.
Jake Terrio.
Here.
Toby Johnbrook. He's here.
Here.
Thanks. Barry Lett.
Here.
Gary Sibley.
Here.
And Sarah Ashley.
Here.
Any adjustments to the agenda?
We do have a couple of adjustments under items for information, and I put this in your agenda, board member, so it's already there. You're going to add a transfer of essential office personnel to Fort Penn Elementary School, and then under new hires, Fort Penn Elementary School secretary and continuing education secretary.
Any public participation? Before we approve the minutes, we're going to kind of get back to the way we used to run the meetings a little bit more. Rather than just everyone speaking up and kind of rambling on, I'm going to ask that you be acknowledged by the chair or vice chair, whichever one of us is running the meeting. I think that way it gives everyone a chance to have some timely input and maybe give us a little bit of time to think between questions sometimes. So if we can just be acknowledged before we speak or comment and give everyone a chance to have input. Also, in talking with Ben, him and his administrative team are very busy right now with everything that's going on. With us individually emailing him and calling him, it takes a lot of time out of his workday, makes it a little more difficult to get things done. So from this point on, if we can just, if you guys have a question, want something added to the agenda, either contact myself or Sarah. We may have the answer, it may be on the agenda already, but we'll just kind of use a chain of command for the board. That would be Sarah. You guys communicating to Sarah and I, we'll go through them. How would you want to handle like the sports issue? You want us to go direct with like Eric or one of the principals, or?
Yeah, I think I know you guys are going to get bombarded by parents asking you questions, and you just need to defer them to their building administrator, their athletic director, because it's already come through me. It's already gone back out to them, and of course, by the time you get wind of it, you might be first, but chances are it's already been being worked on. So go right to those building administrators, and that's the best way. Having parents go directly to them rather than through you. I mean, you're going to feel those questions and continue to do that. I mean, you're going to do that, but encourage parents to just reach out to those administrators.
Everyone good with that? All right, moving on. Approval of minutes for the 882nd meeting.
I have a couple questions on the minutes. There's a couple of items that we talked about that aren't in there. One in particular was our board's position on site selection. It's not in there. We also talked about sending a letter to the other boards telling them on basically our position and what our expectations are. Basically the proportionate vote. It's not in the minutes. So I do not approve it. Because they're incomplete.
I think that was probably under the think tank update period when we talked about that.
I don't see it in it.
No, it's not in there, but I think that's when we talked about it in the last one.
Yep, no, you're right. Yeah, Barry, I need to go right back. I shall be so.
And basically our position was that and a tie vote for us was a no vote as far as for site selection, which means all three parties need to agree and this party doesn't. And the other one was to make it very clear to the other districts that we want a proportionate vote. We're not playing. That was very clear.
I will be sure to add those in. you have a second on the motion?
We didn't have a motion.
There was a motion.
So Gary, can we, so we're tabling the minutes, right?
Right.
Okay. But did you and Toby draft a letter?
Our attorney's working on that. It should be ready tomorrow,
Okay.
which before it goes anywhere, it's obviously going to go to the board here to review it.
It's nice when we're meeting, sorry, Mr. Chairman. It's nice when we are meeting right now once a week. I think it's necessary. Not fun. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Items of old business. Reintegration plan.
Before we get to that, I just noticed that Toby was kicked off. Just want to make sure he's not. Toby, are you back with us?
I will.
Well, I'm going to assume
Sounds like it's trying to work.
Okay, getting into old business, our reintegration plan, I wanted to update you that on something, after our meeting last week, I met with Sharon, Peter, Giselle, Lucy, and we decided that we were going to start meeting regularly together to address some big concerns that are going to come up on a regular basis. So it was actually something that was recommended to me by Northern Maine Medical Center and their administration, something they did when they brought their staff back onto on-site work. So we're calling it the Daily Huddle. Essentially, we're spending half an hour of time every morning, 7:30 to 8 o'clock, to just talk about the key components of health and wellness in our schools, equipment and supplies that we're purchasing, safety protocols that we're putting in place, education determinations, and then personnel determinations. Peter is lead of health and wellness, Lucy for equipment, Giselle for safety, Sharon for education, and then personnel, it's me. And we essentially, we inform each other every morning about what's happening that last day, taking notes. So you can see our notes from Tuesday, our notes from Wednesday. So every day doing this, updating ourselves. And this is the framework for what I spoke to you guys about for our communication plan to staff and parents. Every Friday, so tomorrow, I'm going to compile what we talked about for the week, and I'm going to section off the communication plan according to health, safety, equipment, personnel, and education, and we're going to report out to our staff and then also to the parents. And we plan to do this on a weekly basis until we don't need to, or until the questions are all answered, which is probably going to be a long time. So this has been really valuable. I find that it's a really good use of our time. We're keeping ourselves in the know of everything, and it'll be really, we hope, a really good way to communicate that with our staff. So that's one thing I wanted to update you on. Plan updates, so specific to our plan, I did tell you that it was going to be updated on the fly. So you can see that the last update was made today. So what we're doing when we update things is we date it in the plan so that we can see. There is a face mask covering language on page 5 that's been updated, and that's coming right from the DOE guidelines. And all they did was update face mask coverings must be worn by students on the bus. That's not new. Face shields may be an alternative for those students with a documented medical or behavioral challenge or who are unable to wear face mask coverings. That's been updated. The old language said, or other considerations, and there was way too much ambiguity. How do you say that word? Ambiguity. It was too vague of a statement, so they removed that. and that's been helpful because other challenges is really wide open. So that's one update. We put a link to the CDC guidance for face masks on page 11, which has been really helpful. This link right here talks about why certain masks are better than others. It talks about the mask with the vent on the side not being a good idea for a specific reason, and it talks about why face shields are not as currently not as recommended as the face mask. So we just put that link in there for reference for folks. We updated transportation. Transportation was updated on Tuesday in a email to superintendents, and now with that new language, that guidance, students will sit 2 per seat. Buses will not be filled to maximum capacity. And the 2 per seat is not, it's not straight across the board. With the bigger high school kids, we're still going to keep 1 per seat. With the smaller children, we're going to try more 2 per seat. At no time will we ever reach capacity of the bus. But with the new guidance that we are to not fill the bus to capacity, we feel that this is well within those guidelines. And then with child nutrition, we updated the child nutrition information to explain that remote learners can have access to the school lunch program. They just need to make arrangements to pick up those meals. We will not be delivering with that. So those are the updates to the actual plan. We also created a staff guide. So there's been questions coming in. I believe I shared with you guys last night questions that the union had, the teachers, and our answers to those questions. We've been working on this all week long, a specific guide just for staff that we feel is going to be useful because although the plan has a lot of information, this one's very specific to what staff do. So for example, and I know Jake asked a question today, the email about, how are staff going to know about travel restrictions and when they feel symptoms, should they come to work? So we have an assessment action table in our plan that it describes if you have symptoms and you've been in close contact with a person who's tested positive, or you've traveled to states outside of the allowable travel states. You should be getting tested and you should be quarantining until those test results. So this flowchart is going to be very helpful for folks. As we're talking to the teachers union and we're talking to our administrators, we're trying to encourage our staff to make sure they're open and honest and upfront about, when they are traveling, when they are entertaining guests in their home who may be coming from a place where the infection rate is higher, and how to distance yourself within your home and make that happen. So we feel that this is going to be beneficial. We put the information all as well for the Families First Coronavirus Act. So we've had staff ask about how they're supposed to get sick days when they become ill or if they become ill. So we have the information from the Sick Leave Act for them. We're trying to add as much as we can to answer the questions that people will have before they return to work, how we're handling physical distancing in the rooms, and all of the important topics we're adding to this, talking about the hand hygiene program that we're putting in place for them to help with their students, and how we want them to manage student play. So it's as thoughtful as all the way down to student play. We'll continue to edit this on the fly, but we felt that this is definitely something that the staff will need to have. In front of you, you also have survey data. I did want to share with you the survey data that has come in so far to our schools. And you can see on the first page with respect to the staff integration for CHS. So which staff are returning, which staff may not be returning. You can see so far to date there's been 18 responses. 100% of the CHS VRMS staff are coming to work. We can see who's going to need face masks from us versus who's going to bring their own. They all want supplies to help clean their classroom. We can see how many need social and emotional supports from us. and who will need a thermometer for their morning self-checks. So all that data coming in, and it's very helpful in the planning stages for Mr. Coletta and Mr. Doucette. Same thing for Fort Penn Elementary staff. Little more responses on that. We can see that at least one teacher may be getting a doctor's note to remote teach from home. We do see that we have staff that need face masks from us, or they might get a doctor's note for a face shield. We then asked, this was after the elementary teachers, not the high school, because the elementary teachers will have the option to be solely a remote teacher if they so choose from work, because of the numbers of kids that we need to manage that. We do have some staff that would be willing, 6 elementary staff would be willing to manage remote learning. So that's going to be very helpful when we're dividing the teaching responsibilities. Who's going to be wanting cleaning supplies, so on and so forth. So really good data here as well. The real important data is the student data. How many students are coming back to school? You can see in the next section, CHS student data. Right here. A lot of these, not a lot, but some of this data is repeat data because we are, as you noticed from your 4 o'clock phone call, text, and emails that you're probably getting. Some folks are just responding twice to the survey, like, did I respond to that? And so we're getting repeat data, which is okay. We can sort through on the table, repeats and then delete some of those. But right now we're at, for CHS, 398 responses across the grade levels, and we can see right now approximately 13.5% are reporting that they will remote learn, and we have one student that will be registering for homeschooling between grades 7 and 12. So that gives us a picture. Okay, so about 14%. Now we can start to think about how to manage that and how that looks. We can also see the student transportation, what that looks like. So about 152, a little less than 50% will rely on bus transportation, is what they're saying right now. We realize that could change. And we can also see who needs face masks from the school. We can see as well who is going to need some social, emotional, or behavioral supports, which is good data to have as well, and which families are going to need a thermometer. For the remote learners, we can see who will need technology from us. We can see who does not have sufficient internet. So this raises the question. So we have a learner out of the 54 that is choosing remote learning but does not have the internet to support it. So this is a conversation we're going to have with the family on how do you suppose that's going to work without internet and you're learning from home. So that'll be a one-on-one case where we'll see what the answer is, how the answers lie. And then finally, the Fort Kent Elementary data. You can see that for Fort Kent Elementary, approximately 439 responses. Again, some are repeat responses. About 83% will be coming back to school, about 12% remote learning, and about 5.5% going with homeschooling. I will admit to you, between the 3 districts, homeschool notifications are on the increase this year. It's twofold. One is this, and another one is the mandatory vaccination thing that's coming down the pipe. Some folks are foreseeing that as going to be a problem. So homeschooling is on the rise. We continue to support homeschool learners as best we can. Transportation, higher on the elementary side. Obviously, they don't drive, so more of them need the bus. So about 60% will be using the bus. So we still have quite a few students that are going to be using our buses. And if we're filling our buses at 50% to 60% capacity, we feel that might mean longer time for the kids to come in and go home, just based on multiple bus runs. But we're going to try to get as creative as we can. I can tell you that Peter Sose is definitely on top of it, but it is a concern, of how that's all going to work. So we have the face mask data. We also have the social emotional health data and the thermometer data as well, and remote learning, what's happening there as well. a lot of data to sift through. The next step, so when a parent submits this, it comes through a form like you see here, but what we see on our side, so this is the Fort Kent Elementary, we see on our side, all of that data is compiled into a massive spreadsheet. So we can sort by name, by grade level, we can create tables. Mr. Netto is really good about creating tables where he can identify immediately which learners are needing transportation, which are not. So we can sort through that data, we can identify the duplicates. That just takes time now. Now it's to go through that and start calling the families that we're not hearing from. Mr. Netto, about what percent of families have we yet to hear from?
Well, last time I checked that spreadsheet, they only think I had 3 to 8 responses, so we're expecting about 80 more.
Okay, about so 80 more, and you know that those notifications are out daily, so these are
A couple of years ago, we were waiting on 100 responses, yeah, so we're hoping with the continued swift K-12, we're going to get those soon.
and that just takes time. Any questions on the survey?
Surveys are outstanding. I think it was outstanding. I have one question on the month or the day that state counts, the people that are counted for tuition or for money from the state.
I
think it's September, October.
It's October 1st.
Is it one day or is it a month?
It's October 1st. They take a snapshot of what happened on October 1st. They gave us until October 30 to compile that, but it's called the October 1st.
Can we invite a whole pile of people to come on that day?
We can.
Very good.
We'll have all
I would
the
highly recommend
We'll
it.
have like an open house on there, and they'll all come in. Now, that is the date that we use, October 1.
How do the bus numbers, percentages compare to last year? On who's planning on using, who isn't? Do we have any idea?
It's hard to gauge just because you don't know if it's the same kids that are yes will use the bus or no. That's the next stage of this. Now that we have this, Peter has a program called TransFinder, and he's manually importing the yeses and the nos right now to cross-check. Typically, you take a bus like Denny Netto's, which is a 77-passenger bus. Denny has over 100 kids on his list. 100 kids never ride the bus. Obviously, it's only a 77-passenger bus, but Denny has had up to 65 kids use the bus before. So it all depends on where the numbers lie, and hopefully we'll be able to cross-check that a little bit sooner than later. Any other questions on the data?
Oh, the number of parents that were contacted, you indicated, Steve, how many have not responded from the high school?
Like I said, a couple days ago it was at 100, but our secretaries have been calling all day long, trying to reach families and encourage them to do the survey as soon as possible. And the district has been sending out the notice for the surveys as well.
We've pushed it out social media pages, it's on our web pages, the school web pages, it's on the Valley Unified page, really trying to push out and make sure that folks...
That really does impact the number of students, a teacher would have in the classroom.
Right.
So is there anything else that you can do at this point to try to put a little pressure on those parents, because they're kind of sitting on it? Maybe they ought to be told that unless you hear from them in the next 24 to 48 hours, that maybe they should consider homeschooling.
I think
I think you got to put a little pressure on these parents, because they're going to sit on it, but it impacts the quality of education that's going to happen in these buildings.
What we can do is when we identify exactly who has not responded, we can actually send those alerts specifically to those families. So we do a custom list so that not everyone is bombarded by the calls.
Right.
And those might go out 2-3 times a day at that point.
Right.
They might become a little annoying, which we don't want to annoy people, but we need answers. But specifically to answer your question, Mr. Susie, what do we need to get more of this? We're going to need a little time. And I think, I've shared that with you last night. A little bit more time will definitely help with this and a couple of other things as well that we'd like you to consider. So that's what I have for survey data. wanted to update you on what we've been buying. So this is our spreadsheet for CRF funds, CARE funds, equipment purchase. We're keeping everything detailed and itemized just because we need to make sure that the reimbursements on this are going to happen. A lot of it is cleaning supplies. A lot of it is PPE, face masks, thermometers, hand sanitizer, wipes, everything you can think of. Technology supplies are a big thing. Water bottle filling stations. So really all things specific to this pandemic. One of the big ticket items that we've recently purchased, we're getting individual desk shields for every student. Even though right now the guidance from the department is to wear these or a face shield for yourself, we feel that the desk shield, the partition, is only added security, and we feel that when these phase out, that might be the next guidance, that you have a barrier, because that's what you see at Shop and Save, that Quigley's, you see those plexiglass dividers. We look at different units, some that were 4x4 for the middle of tables. They have different structures, but in the end we felt, what better than a trifold where a student can take it with them to another class, and they each have their own independent one. They'll also double as privacy shields, so you can actually tape a piece of paper on the inside of those, so when students are taking assessments, they have privacy in taking that. So we felt it also has a purpose beyond just this pandemic. So that was a big ticket item. We're going to continue to look at it. We're getting technology for all the teachers. Every teacher will have a webcam. Although we have a camera on our computers that face us, when teachers, especially our high school teachers, are going to be teaching remote learners from home as they're teaching in front of their class, they're going to need a camera that's going to be placed closer to them that focuses on their teaching so that students have that. We're also getting teachers an iPad so that they have the camera function from the iPad, and also the various Zoom functions where they don't have to be sitting behind a desktop computer or a laptop computer or holding it while they're trying to navigate both worlds. Having that iPad in their hands is going to be a lot more fluid, a lot more flexible. So that's something as well. So right now, we are just shy of $89,000 of purchases. As I shared with you last time, we have over $709,000 in CRF funds. These funds will gonna go a long way in helping us prepare and really think about it. And unfortunately, we don't know yet all the, we need this, we need that. But definitely we're gonna look at it. I know you guys have approved the construction approval for the safety vestibule here at Fort Penn Elementary School, where we're putting the double doors as a safety vestibule. We're looking at that now for the high school as a COVID-19 safety protocol, where we're doing the temperature monitoring. We'd like to have the second set of doors there. It's going to serve as both safety from intruders, but also safety because of this pandemic. So we're going to look at doing some building improvements through these funds as well, as long as they serve a reason because of the pandemic. So that's something we're looking at as well.
I have a couple of questions. One is, are any of these supplies completely necessary, or that you have to have before we start?
Yep, the things that we do not currently have that we definitely need are the PPE supplies. We did a massive order through the Maine Department of Education. They had all of us go through and do a mass order that's going to be delivered by the Maine National Guard. We heard they may come next week. We don't know if it's coming next week. So that's the big thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Other than that, we're pretty well prepared. We do need a few more days to finish up signage and that type of thing and getting our safety protocols in place. But we need the PPE. The N95 masks for our nurses and our first responders, we need test fitting for those. Those are really key components that we definitely need.
You didn't get them when you delayed Mr. Chairman? If you didn't get it, would you delay the start of school?
I'm going to ask you to approve a delay for the start of school. If another week goes by and we're in the same spot, I don't know that I'll feel any safer. You know what I mean? We need PPE. But I hate kicking this can down the road, but I think the department forgot that Aroostook County starts, you know, a little earlier than the rest of the state. So we've ordered our own stuff, and we have our own stuff. You know, we have disposable paper masks, but as you saw from the families that need things, we're going to be supplying families with, to start, our own supplies, and that's going to eat up quick before we get the real supplies. So we're hoping to have everything in place and feel secure about that.
Not to sound negative or anything, but I order supplies every day, and they usually only get half by the end of the week.
You buy from Canada, right?
No. Maybe I should.
Equipment update. I gave you the handbook. So the last piece to this is the calendar that I think would be a prudent adjustment to make based on all of the information I shared with you, the PPE, technology back orders. We were originally not going to order the webcams because the iPads had the camera functionality. iPads are on back order until mid-October.
Yes.
Mid-October. We needed something next week for teachers to train on. So we ordered the webcams. Those are coming in hopefully Monday or Tuesday. We need them for staff training. N95 mask testing, that's you know, for sure. PPE shields. We've made our own shields with our 3D printers. We've made about 35, 36 for the district, just in case. But those aren't medical shields. I mean that they're 3D printers that we use in the library, Mr. Neto and I. We put a laminating shield. I mean, those are the extent of those masks. So it's better than nothing, but it's not the safe things. And then the numbers are just not. The numbers are not there yet to be able to inform our teachers about this is how many kids you're going to have in class. This is how many kids you're going to have online. So as I share with you this calendar, it's simply a 1 week adjustment. The previous draft had the high school starting this week here. You can see on the big screen they were starting this week here, and now they would be starting the following week. The students would now start the 27th and start it instead of the 20th. In doing that, if we have to adjust the middle high school, we have to adjust the elementary school so they have the same amount of days because the potato harvest is 2 weeks. And we also want the 2 week barrier to see how it goes with the big kids before we bring the little kids on. So for the littles, staff would have a workshop on Friday because Monday's a holiday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the students would start on the 10th. We would not adjust the pre-K. We still think that that's okay for pre-K to start when the big kids leave. That fits within our plan. So that's 5 days that we've adjusted. So we had to find 5 days somewhere in the calendar. We found December 23, which is it's not a popular day to have a school day 2 days before Christmas. I know that because we did it this past year. But we're going to need that day. We're going to have an early release, and I mean we just needed to take that day. We also had a vacation day on April 16. That was marked off as a vacation day. We took that day as the second day. Then we added the third day on June 17, the fourth day on June 18, and then the last day would be a staff-only day on the following Monday. June 21 is that, and you know, we would do our regular thing where it's typically like a barbecue and a wellness, and really send off our staff for their well-deserved summer. So this is what we are proposing as a needed change so that we can prepare for all this stuff that's not in yet.
Is there any flexibility from the department as far as student days go, or even though we're in pandemic, we have to?
Nope, the student days are totally flexible. So my proposal to you would be if we have any snow days this year, we do not make them up for students. We would have a plan in place to have remote PD days for our staff, so they have a working day on snow days instead, because they have to make up their days. They have to work their 182. Exactly. In fact, if we wanted to back up the day, but again, it's a catch-22, right? We had a shortened year last year. We really want to get these kids. I keep telling folks, We are so blessed to live where we live, and we are able to send our kids to school. We're the envy of the state right now, that we can do this without a hybrid model. And I know some people are still scared, but I mean, when you look at our community spread of the COVID-19 and where it's at, and that it's currently, non-existent, that's amazing for us to be able to try to capture as many student days as we can, and hope that we don't have to go into remote learning. That's my hope.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this, provided that we might change it next week. Because if we don't have the proper supplies, there's no sense in going forward.
Moved by Barry, second by Keith.
Any discussion?
Just for the calendar.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Are we getting Toby later?
So food's back on you.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, is Toby with us?
Yeah, Toby, do you approve the calendar change? It was a motion by Barry, second by Keith.
Thumbs up.
I don't know how this remote stuff's going to work.
Probably can't hear it.
You'll let us know.
So do you guys have any questions on the adjustments to the plan other than that? I did. Go ahead, Dick.
That 0 to 5 guidelines that the Northern Maine Medical Center communicated to you as a way to push forward. I wanted some clarification associated with that. So if a family gets it and the family's 5 people, then that counts as 5 active cases and we go to remote learning hybrid model right away? Or is it, what's the framework for that?
Yeah, that's a.
And then, for example, the college is assigning one of the houses as an active case, right? So they're secluding their population if they get an active case. And they have space for 3 individuals who are confirmed positive. So that I feel like what I'm getting down to is I feel like that 0 to 5 is too tight of a number for us as a community, because if you have one family who gets it, then everyone's remote learning. Except for K-4 and the population we want to bring back to school, right? So I just want you to think about it. I'd like a little more flexibility in that, because I hate to think that one family coming down with it means that we have to change the way we're doing operating school.
My bigger fear, and I totally agree with you, my bigger fear is that we only have 1 or 2 cases locally or 5, and everyone starts pulling back and saying, oh my goodness, right? Because we have community, even though it's small, and the data says you should have less than 5 per 100,000, which we're never going to get, right? My fear is that people don't trust the science, but they just look at, an initial knee-jerk reaction. I think this, because this plan is fluid, I think we have to look at it by case by case. If it's one family, do we recognize that as one outbreak? If it's contained. I think that's a valid point. My bigger fear is that, and then we look at our second column, maybe hybrid then is simply those that feel comfortable continuing, because the numbers have dwelled so much towards remote learning. So we won't know until it happens. But absolutely, I think we have to keep it flexible and look at each case by case as a.
So you wouldn't just use 5 and then call the parents and say.
No, I think we would consult with our health advisor and look at the situation carefully. So part of the huddle that we do every morning is we look at the CDC data, but we look at Northern Maine Medical's data, and we talk about what's happening in both. So we're always going to have that communication, and we use Dr. Hart's advice at that time about it.
And because, and the fact that we're sharing this pool of active cases with the St. John Valley, I think that's something we have to be aware of too. We have a family in Allagash versus a family in Grand Isle, or not Grand Isle, but.
Yeah, I think we look at it and make a valid choice. Good point.
No, still a couple more questions, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious about the teacher, some of the feedback for the remote learning piece.
Yep.
there a threshold where you're gonna have high school teachers are only gonna be allowed so many remote learners before they can turn it off and say that the class is, this population of students is all remote learning and the load is too much for the teacher? Do you guys have a threshold?
Yeah, so one thing that the high school, and that goes for the elementary too as well, we don't want to create a situation that's not manageable. So, if we're looking at a class, and we're fortunate enough where we have multiple sections of a class, we're not going to put all the remote learners in Ms. Leslie Marquis', first block biology. We're going to try to spread them between, the others so that we're making it equitable. Right now, with the population that we're seeing being really even, and really even across the board, it may look like 1 or 2 remote learners per session. So not concerning right now, but we definitely have to look at that. If we can free up, a space, it's a little bit easier at the middle school where you have general instructors, right? Your middle school teachers are generalists, they're not specialists, so they can teach more subjects. If we have to assign a block of time to a middle school teacher to do remote, we may have to do that, but it all depends on the numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Toby just texted and said that he's voting via text, via Zoom.
Oh, okay,
He did approve the calendar.
perfect, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question about how, similarly, what does that look like with RISE?
Mr. Nettles, what does RISE look like?
Well, so the first thing is we have to look at the numbers in these, so there's a chance that there's the numbers in that cohort that will be able to have a rise teacher that might be in that facility. If not, we'll have a more teacher that may not necessarily facilitator from rise, but the rise teachers have done a tremendous amount of work with the power in terms of getting the standards. We've had teachers do their scopes and sequences before school out last time. So those are going to be the things that are going to guide the whole learning for a teacher that maybe didn't have this kid before. That's going to guide their learning.
So they would still follow, because there's playlists and all that stuff, they would still follow that.
To a certain extent, because it has to be at somewhat to the comfort level of what the remote teachers will be doing. But we'll be encouraging that.
Are you going to be sharing what curriculum go through a day would look like for remote learners for different kindergarten, second grade versus fourth grade? Like, what would a remote learner's day look like? Are they just going to sit in front of an iPad or a computer? I mean, what is it?
No.
I think it'd be interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, we've learned a lot since this spring. We didn't know if I sent this paper home, we would infect the entire household, So we've learned a lot now. We realize that the exchange of materials can happen safely, with a process. So we're definitely, especially in starting from the lower age groups, those packets have to be part of what goes to a remote learner's home. Specific to what exactly that framework looks like, we don't want to prescribe everything to a certain way because the teacher needs some voice and choice in that. So what happens in Miss Amy's kindergarten class is different than what happens in another kindergarten class. This is going to be the same for the remote learner. We want the framework to be workable, and we've seen this spring that we know what kids can handle. We know how many hours they can handle based on their grade level. So we're going to give them that framework. But how much screen time versus how much paper time versus how much creative time, we're talking about that not only for our remote learners, but our in-classroom learners. Because we got real comfortable with these through remote learning. I don't want to see this being the new thing when kids are here. So it's that healthy divide of 25% this, 25% that, and that's going to shadow in remote learning.
When do you think you might have something you can present to parents about what a day might look like?
I think that'll be like a teacher sending out when the teacher has their welcome packet, it'll be based on their, what they created.
Thank you.
How are you going to deliver the unique paper?
U.S. Postal Mail.
Lunch?
It could be, but we're not delivering lunch, but we're, depending on
remote learners might have lunch, right?
they're going to come in for lunch. So perhaps if they come in for lunch, they pick up packets at that time, or when we're doing our after-school deliveries of students, we're making arrangements for them to meet the bus for their packets. We'll work with folks.
So the remote learners are going to go eat at school?
No, they're gonna pick up their lunch. We're not delivering lunches.
Okay, there you go.
We're not
All right,
delivering
now I got it.
lunches. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
need our buses and our drivers.
Any additional questions or comments? Move on to new business.
New business, we have a transfer, central office personnel to Fort Kent Elementary Title I. Today we approved the transfer of Ashley Pelletier, who is central office. She's accounts payable and receptionist. She wanted to transfer to the vacant Title I Ed Tech 3 position. Ashley really aspires to be a classroom teacher, and she wants to get in the classroom now sooner than later, so we felt this was something we should honor, as she's been a very dedicated employee for many years. So we approved this transfer. It's sad for our office, but Mr. Neto is getting a wonderful
Lucy
person.
Tabor cry?
Lucy Tabor has been crying.
She's been crying.
Quite a bit. I think there were a few tears shed today at the office. New hire, I am pleased to announce that we found a truck driver, and we are recommending Mr. Charlie Willett to come back, and instead of making his wonderful cake, he's going to be driving the truck bus.
Do you know what he does once he left school?
He was trucking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's an awesome choice.
Yeah, and he got tired of a long time away from home, and so he was really interested in this.
Be entertaining, that's for sure.
We have a motion to accept Charlie, approve Charlie.
Yes.
So move.
Nice second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. You in favor?
Are you in favor?
Oh, you didn't see what happened?
You do have a letter in your packet that I just provided you this evening. We had interviews for the Fort Kent Elementary School school secretary. If you remember, Bethany transferred to the middle high school. Jill transferred to Bethany's position, so there was an opening for that. Mr. Neto and Ms. Jill Kelly and Jill Jandro all interviewed candidates, and they are recommending Heidi Babin for the position.
Motion by Barry,
Second?
second by Jake. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
And at the same time, we were also advertising for our continuing ed secretary, and that was vacant because Angela transferred to guidance. And so Ms. Stacy's here and Don LaBelle interviewed candidates, and they are recommending Alicia Labatt Burgoyne for this position.
So move.
Motion by Kerr,
Second.
second by Barry. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
No, it's a transfer. Current openings, we have 2 one-on-one ed techs that are still open at Fort Kent Elementary School. And now because of Ashley's transfer, we have a central office receptionist accounts payable position. The last thing that you have is approval of the CHS DRMS Learner Handbook, and Mr. Doucette gave you that in advance with some red font to show you what has changed in the handbook, and Mr. Doucette is here to answer your question.
Question, Mr. Chairman. Page 35, the top of it. I think with adding additional flexibility to your high school instructors, I would just strike out allowing students to enroll in college or campuses if they're offered at community high school. And given the fact that rural U and Fort Kent is eliminating fees associated with their programs, the third courses.
Where is that, Dave?
The second, third, last sentence, post-secondary enrollment and dual enrollment options. Page 35. Do you want to?
This is something, this is something we talked about last time. Do you remember?
I didn't hear it.
Okay, sorry. What Jake is mentioning is in your handbook, under post-secondary enrollment and dual enrollment,
Yeah.
you have a sentence that says, except for very unusual circumstances, learners will not be allowed to enroll in courses in college or universities that are offered at CHS. And we had talked about this last meeting that there's more online course offering now at the University of Fort Kent, and the idea that we should be encouraging students to take as many online courses as they can. And then you mentioned, I had mentioned, I don't know how the union is going to feel about the kid taking a course there when they could be taking a course with one of our teachers. I don't know if you remember having that conversation, if we should talk more about that. This is actually policy, so we'd have to change the policy. Policy IHCBA.
I know we ask teachers opinion on it,
Right.
but I thought it was policy.
It is policy. So, one thing that I can mention, so maybe slash Jake or help Jake, one thing that Mr. Coletta and Mr. Doucette are building in at the high school, because we are planning a staggered start and a staggered end of the day, just naturally because of the transportation that will happen, we might be encouraging kids that are dropped off with their parents to have a different window of time adjustment, especially when school starts. So there's going to be a period in the morning when kids arrive and before the kids leave, where they have their win time, W-I-N, what I need time for acceleration, time for remediation, time to meet with club advisors, that type of thing. We will be promoting online coursework during those blocks of time that is not a traditional instructional block of time. So that's actually something that we're going to be promoting quite heavily. But I think we should maybe revisit the policy and see how that lies here. But we're definitely promoting early college.
Well, I'd like to, I feel like we're late in the game to be looking at this policy with the school year starting so soon, but all the courses that you shared with us, if I recall correctly, are online and synchronous, so the student can take them whenever they want. You want to encourage them to do the work at school because it forces them to get the work done, but they can complete work at home like we would traditionally do. You do homework at home. I really think this is a good opportunity to promote college courses for a student, as well as if you can free up the instructor's time here. I think it'd be a boom for this upcoming year because you'd like the additional flexibility. So as far as what's in this policy, I think I'm on the policy committee, right?
Yep.
So, I don't know, this is the first time I've called these nations, not the first time. However, I'm just wondering what you would want to do. I really want to either remove it entirely, but it doesn't seem like we can do this right now.
I don't think we need to. I think that speaks to very unusual circumstances, which I think this certainly qualifies as. So, I mean, they're probably doing it this year. And I think Ben just said that they're going to review that. They'll come before you guys.
Every kid that wants to take an early college course, we're going to try to make it.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
So that's something your guidance counselors are going to be pushing for?
Yep. They were very excited to see the updated list that I shared with you all.
Yeah.
So,
Well, okay.
Could we just strike this paragraph in the reference to the policy?
just take it out of the handbook.
Yes.
Would you be okay with that, Mr. Duca?
I'm okay with that, as long as you move it.
It doesn't change the policy. The
Yeah,
policy's still the
it's just, it's not, the language is not gonna be going to the parents.
Or we can modify it to say CHS will work with any learner who wants to take an early college. I mean, we can actually say that we're going to have some flexibility in addition to this. You know what I mean?
And then at the next policy committee meeting, you guys can discuss.
Yep.
Sending us the first read.
Yep.
I think it should be in there so it highlights the parents will see it.
What if you just remove the third sentence?
I think the,
I'm okay with that.
the problem lies with the policy. So when the policy changes, this will change. So I think where our solution lies is with changing the policy. And then when that adjusts, this has to adjust, because that's the policy. right now your policy says this.
No, okay. And I think the chairman had a good point. We are in extenuating circumstances.
I did want to mention Mr. John Rowe online did ask a question if we have release time this year, the religion ed time. There will be no release time, at least to start the year, because it would be unmanageable for the social distancing to happen in the facility that they have the classes. So this is something that Mr. Meadow has spoken to Barb about, and we're all on the same page, and it's actually the same thing that's happening in the other two communities as well. We still want to continue it in the future, but given the situation right now, there will be no release time.
If any other discussion on the handbook?
I move that we approve it.
Barry?
You don't have a problem with the PDA, Barry? I'm just curious about the PDA. Is kiss on the cheek considered kissing? Or the,
It's gonna be hard to
public
mask
display of
now.
affection?
I was looking at that, that's going to be pretty hard with a mask.
Excuse me?
It's going to be pretty hard with a mask.
Well then, I don't know. I don't remember it being that big of a deal in high school, but has it been a big deal for you guys to deal with it?
I appreciate the question, because we're the ones that, or our staff often are the ones that see. There are usually isolated cases where you have, fairly intimate couples that are the ones that we have difficult times to, separate, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It makes the student body uncomfortable. It makes the staff uncomfortable. And we want to at least in writing so that it's not viewed as merely an opinion or, oh, you're just an old fogey. You don't understand what us young folks feel. You know what I mean?
Word love.
But then if we switch the tables and say, how about what if we were doing this, they quickly, see it our way. But we just wanted it in writing. Most of what I've added in there this year is stuff that was not in there. It was understood. It was, between the lines kind of stuff. I just wanted to explicitly lay out some rules a little bit easier, and it makes it easier for us when we have to defend our position, when we say, well, either the parent or the child, you read this and you signed this. So, it gives us a little bit more leverage. We just want to keep our schools as professional as possible, and we want to teach these young folks lifelong lessons.
I think kissing and hugging is a good thing. Maybe
What?
I think kissing and hugging is a good thing. I hug my dad. I think it's a pretty cool thing that I do.
Well,
but I not to belabor the point. Not to belabor the point.
This is more slurping than kissing sometimes. It's different.
I know. I feel like
a peck on the cheek or something, or a show of, we have friends that will do that. You know what I mean? No one's
so you're going to be judicious in how you approach it. Or is it going to be uniform, only hand holdings allowed, and I can't put my arm around you when we're on the bus?
It all surrounds the level of intimacy. You know what I mean? If it's passion versus just friendliness, and you know what I mean? There's a difference there.
And as an educator, I can tell you that it's difficult to define that and to assess that. Is that too much kissing? You've been kissing for 5 minutes now. Is your hand where it's supposed to be?
No, sir.
No. I'm not even going there. I think it's a great policy. I'm glad you have it there.
I'm just curious.
Right
I
on.
want to make sure.
I second the motion already.
Mr. Chairman? Oh.
So I worked at the high school, I was a health teacher, and I just say from the colleagues that I work with, you can tell the difference between inappropriate behavior and inappropriate behavior. No one that I know that I work with, if it's a kiss on the cheek or even a kiss on the lips, that's like a fleeting moment or holding hands, but we definitely know when it's inappropriate. And so I think it's nice you need to know that no one is share that from perspective of the educator in the classroom, you know, the classroom, the halls. It can get pretty standards.
And one last point, Mr. Chairman, and I'll stop. When I see something like this, and what I've heard from people saying it, it's okay sometimes and it's not okay sometimes. And so I feel like some people will get away with it and some won't. So I hope it's well maintained in practice and it's uniform across the board. Thank you.
I have full confidence in our staff and professionals.
Sure.
Second.
So Barry, motion for a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have one item to mention about the tobacco and nicotine product paragraph. Is that all inclusive with e-cigarettes as well in that policy?
Most places that we're talking about, that's why last year, we included the word nicotine, because there's other nicotine products out there now. So things like e-cigarettes and, you know, even gums and stuff like that, they weren't there. So that's why we use that terminology as well. It's certainly not like a Colgate where it's packs of cigarettes and cigarettes. It's mostly e-cigarettes.
Any additional comments? All those in favor? Toby's abstaining because he doesn't have it before him. Okay. Everyone else is in favor. Next meeting?
Next meeting.
Next week. Might have to change the calendar next week.
Do we want to look at Monday, the 24th?
We potentially had a workshop that day.
Yeah.
I'm fine, except for Tuesday night.
Is that?
Fine, except for Tuesday night.
Yes.
What date?
Would that work for everyone? Or do you want to send it?
What date? What's the date?
Monday, 24th.
24?
Yeah.
And if there's anything that happens in the meantime, you let us know.
We can call it emergency.
Tenfold.
Six?
Yeah. 24th. 24th at 6.
It's okay.
Probably good. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Someone.
Second. All those in favor? Yeah. All right.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Thank you, Toby.